politics? I know I am. I don't know if it'll help you or harm you, but politics have gone on for quite a while. Some of Jesus' earliest missionaries got into a great debate, probably a few, but the one that I want to share with you this morning is that between Paul and James. So you know, Paul was a great missionary. He single-handedly almost brought Christianity into the then-known world. His 3 great voyages across the sea to the Greek islands are recorded history. Definitely no mythology there. And he was Jewish and believed that Christianity could and should be brought to all nations. A very inclusive person. He wanted to show that it wasn't just a Jewish sect that Jesus had advocated for. And Paul's words in Romans were, faith alone is necessary for salvation or justification. Faith alone is saving apart from works of the law. And James, who around the same time was going out and spreading the word, remember, talked about the Trinity last week, where Jesus said to the apostles, go out and make disciples of all nations. Metaphysically, nations are our thoughts, and the disciples are our 12 powers, those that we exercise, that we realize, that we try and achieve the potential of to become more of that Christ in us, our hope of glory, that Paul wrote about. So James, though, on hearing this writing of Paul in his letters to the Romans, James said, faith without works is dead. So we have a bit of a debate there, and I wonder, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Where do you line up? And here's a few of mine. Paul represents, by the way, our evolving will. So you remember Paul on the road to Damascus, he was going seeking the authority to persecute Christians to the nth degree. And he had an experience of Christ that we don't know exactly how or why, but he went to that place of highest consciousness, and in the heavens, he saw the face of Jesus. Didn't really know him into the earthly life that Jesus had, but after the ascension, Paul was touched by this man and this message and dedicated the rest of his life to carrying that message. So it's interesting that someone devoting his life to Christianity and his faith in Christ would say, faith alone, apart from works, is necessary. So the operative words from James and Paul, faith and works. Eric Butterworth, who's one of the most well-respected and prolific unity writers of this era, he's gone now, but wrote very recently. He said, to say that we don't have faith is error. We all have faith, but we can invest our faith in the negative. Worry is a form of faith. Fear is a form of faith. If we keep going to that place over and over to bring more of whatever it is we're going to, that is a form of faith. And Butterworth says, to have faith in the positive requires discipline. So it requires Paul in us, our Paul self, evolving our will from a personal, fear-based, worried place that I know I often go to that universal good that flows through each and every one of us as we remember to return to God and return to God. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said that faith is the perceiving power of mind linked to the ability to shape substance. Substance is everything we see and everything that has the potential to be seen. In the very ethers is this manna from heaven, this substance that we have the ability to shape, that each of you are shaping as you come forward into this world this morning. You put together your clothes, your attitude, and you bring it forth into this world. So we evolve. Remember the power for the month of September, order, and that's organize, adapt, and evolve. So we do see ourselves evolving. James, who saw that faith without works is dead, and it's accepted by theologians that James was answering Paul's assertion that faith alone is necessary. They both agreed on what faith was, as far as we can tell from the book of James and from Paul's letters. But Paul says faith apart from the works of law. He, in that bringing the message of Jesus to all the world, to Gentiles as well as Jews, was of the opinion that you didn't have to become Jewish to become Christian. So he goes on to explain what he means by works of law, that it's not necessary. He talks about, just right after that famous quote that faith alone is necessary, he talks about circumcision. Or he says God does not care whether one is circumcised or uncircumcised. That's form over substance, was his message, that the works of law are form. And if we, and as a Pharisee, before he had his conversion, he knew all about form, about the hundreds of Jewish laws that a good Jew had to complete every day. So that's what he's throwing out. He's saying, let's not look at the outer appearance. Let's look to the indwelling Christ, our hope of glory, the infinite flow, we would call it today. That flow of good that we recognize at the beginning of every service. So the work that James refers to is right there again in the book of James, after he says faith without works is dead. He says if someone comes to you who is hungry and in need of clothes, and you say, have faith, bless you, go on your way. Now Jesus could do that. Jesus just had to touch somebody, and they were transformed. But we are not so capable of that. So James says, if you say to someone, have faith, but don't reach out in order to have compassion, in order to allow your life to be affected by the suffering in the world, then he says, yeah, you tell me about your faith. I'll show you my faith through my works. So different kinds of works. As Paul represents our evolving will, James represents judgment. As a power, it's known as discernment and order. That which is righteous judgment can transform our lives for the better. But usually we have to apply that to ourselves, to know what is right for us, rather than allowing that judgment to be of others. Now, we all go there, I think, from time to time. I know I do. But the power is about living and let live would be the saying today, live and let live by living your life to the utmost. By living your life to the utmost. And not having your focus on the wrong side of your nose. You know, the focus belongs on this side of my nose, not the other side. I'm reminded of Martha and Mary. Remember? Martha, a good woman, seeking to make her home comfortable for Jesus. She's scurrying around and attempting to make her place as comfortable as she can for Jesus. And she notices Mary, and her judgment comes in, her James nature comes in, if we're talking metaphysically. And Jesus is now there, and Mary's at his feet. And Martha goes and says, tell her to come and help me. And Jesus says, no, hers is the better part. She is sitting, absorbing the Christ presence, returning to God. Because if your cup is not full, you cannot help another. Because if you help with resentment, that's going to come out. There's a movie called Sideways about that. It'll come out sideways. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. And that is in all respects. We're not only talking about tithing there, unless we're tithing our talent and time and treasure. Anybody remember the 4 T's? That was popular in Unity about 30 years ago. Yeah, we tithe our time, talent, and treasure. So, I'm going to close today reminding myself and you about keeping our James nature, our judgment nature, balanced with our evolving will, that will of God that is within each of us, trying to be expressed, knocking at the door of our consciousness and our hearts. Whatever your heart's desire is the works for you to bring out into this world, the works that you are passionate about. And I'd love to hear them. So I want to end with a saying that I've come to love just lately, and it is by Rabindranath, and I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, but Rabindranath Tagore, who said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life is service. I acted, and behold, service is joy. I get to experience joy, so much joy this afternoon, beginning with Diane's class on spiritual social action, putting our 5th principle into action. It is not enough to know that there's only one power and presence, and that we are the expression of that power, and to know that the highest thought forms are prayers, affirmative prayers, and that we want to stay in that place of affirmation and prayers. It is not enough to do this only on Sunday morning, but to live into this for our whole week, our whole lives. That is our 5th principle. And Diane's cup is filled to the point with those principles, with her love for this church, for this unity movement, that she wants to share that with you all. So consider over coffee and dessert. And then I get to go and share Elizabeth's joy. We're going to see the floor plan of the Santa Maria Golf Clubhouse in order to do the flash mob we've been talking about. And I just love that the peace circle will be open. We'll do it as a spiral. Instead of the circle, which is wonderful that we form at the end of service, this will be an open circle, inviting people in, much as Jesus is illustrating for us to do in that picture on the side wall. So people will join that spiral, and we'll see how that's going to work when we do our lead others in the flash mob. And then I get to go and on the corner of North 19th Street and Spanish Town Road to share food with anyone who comes up and says, hey, what are you all about? And we say, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what your life is like. And we want to share our food with you. You are invited for all of that and more. And I just love to hear what you get passionate about, what you get excited about, what works you can bring into this world for the joy that is available when we develop those powers. Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it abundantly. So, when we get depleted, which we do, right? There is a time for every purpose under heaven, and we're not all going to be with a cup running over at all times. So we have to go back as Paul directed us. We have to go back into that faith that we have, that we are the expression of God. We have to rest to become filled up again in order to then be directed with divine ideas that we reach into in order to come from that place of God that is within us. So I invite you that the time now is to become restored, to rest in that infinite flow that we call God. So find that comfortable place in your chair, if you will. Put aside any books or purses. Come into the closet.